Hey, perfect. Well, let's get started. Good morning. No, once again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Learn and Share webinar from us here at People Insight. My name is Costa. I am your host for this afternoon session, being joined by the fantastic people team from Medivet, Joe and Helen, who we're going to be hearing from shortly. And today's session, we are talking about the importance of the right communication campaign, in particular listening to Medivet's story as well, when feedback fuels social good. So very excited for that story to be shared with yourselves. Before we get started, some housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded, so please feel free to take your notes, but just know the webinar session will be recorded and shared with you afterwards, so you can rewatch, you can share again. Keep the comments coming in and any reactions, any reflections, any observations. If you have questions, throw them in there. If we can get to them, fantastic. We'll try our best to do so at the end. If unable to, then we'll do our best to get back to you later on. And please remember, we're here to help. So at People Insight, a big part of how we work is working closely with our partners, clients, and even non-clients in having conversations. So anything you just want to pick our brains on, our brains are here to be picked. So please do get in touch. We've got many organizations joining today, some clients who we currently work with and some who are not clients. So for those who are new to us, welcome to People Insights. We provide our partners the most actionable employee experience platform powered by people. That's our mission, that's our goal. And it's the amalgamation of these two things, agile AI-powered platform, really enhanced, and first-hand experience and expertise that creates and drives that positive change within organizations, which we have seen with those we work with time and time again. We work with a number of different organizations across sectors, so private, public, not-for-profit. We work with different industries. We work with organizations of different sizes based in different parts of the world, each aspiring to have a high-performing culture, high engagement, and a very positive employee experience culture. So each very similar in that aspect, no matter how different they are to one another. Now, comms is a journey. It's not a one-off message. And before we get into Medivet's story, a general note about communication we want to make around surveys is, firstly, no matter how, we're all very well aware of how important communication is. We all know it. It always comes up in surveys. Yet, the funny thing is, communication is something that's very often overlooked in surveys. Most effort goes into the pre-design stage, getting the questionnaire right, setting up the survey and the building, meaning, sadly, the survey can often be launched with a single email. That does give it that feeling of a tick box exercise. Getting the comms right is equally imperative because, simply put, how we talk about the survey shapes how people engage with it. And that's the most important part of this. And I'll say that again, how we talk about the survey shapes how people engage with it. It builds trust and clarity. Without it, even a well-designed survey, so perfect questions, perfect images, everything can fall flat. The golden rule when it comes to a survey is that it's a campaign, not a moment. So remember that it's a campaign, not a moment. What happens before, what happens during, what happens after are equally important. So before the survey, how do you build awareness? How do you build purpose? During the survey, how do you keep people informed of participation rates, of keeping the space open for any questions they may have around the survey, especially around anonymity? After the survey, how do we share results? How quick are we at doing that? How do we talk about next steps? And after, as in, a good 6 months, 12 months after the survey, how do we keep people informed of what's happened as a result of the survey? Even if the progress has been minimal, communication is still important. So communicate, communicate, communicate. Doesn't need to be flashy, just clear, honest, and human. Do that, you'll earn trust, and you'll gain participation. Ultimately, what you want is for people who are completing the survey to feel that their input, their feedback, their voice plays a part in shaping the future of that organization. And we know from our experience, when working with organizations that get the campaign right around communication, there is a 20-point increase in participation. So think of your own organizations and think of the size. So if you're 100, 200, whatever it is, the number, think of what 20% extra participation means. It means more accurate insight. It means more data. It means more analysis you can work with and create the right actions going forward. Do that right. Furthermore, you get a higher sense of belief in action. So there's a question we asked, which I'm a big fan of, which is I believe something will happen as a result of the survey. And that often increases when the communication is right. Even if nothing's changed as a result of the survey, sometimes just talking about it in the right way, engaging the relation in the right way, generates that feeling. And I know from my experience of doing this for the last 11 to 12 years, that question, increased belief in action, is very much often one of the 5 top key drivers of engagement. So right communication campaign, more data you can work with, which is great, more increased belief in action, and higher engagement, which is something we know all organizations are striving for. Now, before I move on to ask Joe and Helen to share the Medivet story, just a bit about how we can help you at People Insight. For us, communication is not just an ad hoc thing. It's not an add-on. We see it as a crucial part of every survey program. It's something we discuss from the get-go, something we discuss during the survey, and it's something we discuss with you post-survey as well, and throughout the conversations we're having you after the survey and long before the survey. So how we collaborate with you is an important aspect, talking to the right people, us involving the right people who are comms experts, thinking about the whole calendar year and how we'll operate within that 12-month period when it comes to communication. Thinking about bespoke approach. Every organization is different. Yes, comms is important, but every organization is different. What are your values? What are your current internal communication channels? What's the leadership voice? What are the forums you use? How do we align to your purpose? That is equally important. While the survey is going live or even before it's live, thinking about the campaigns you want to run. How can you encourage, but at the same time, you want to excite. You want this to feel far more than just a one-off exercise or tick box thing. You want it to feel as though it's part of something bigger and people are fully onboarded with that. And of course, and probably an even more crucial part is post-survey. How do we go about sharing insights? How quick should we be with that? And there's a question that came in around how quick should we be sharing results? The different formats you can create. Thinking of the population as well that are, and I know Joe and Helen are going to touch on this, where you've got hard to reach type employees who are just not sitting behind a laptop waiting for an email come their way. They're on their feet, they're very busy, maybe stressful jobs, maybe they're in cars, they're driving, in factories, the vet, whatever it is. How do you engage with those individuals as well? And some examples here just to share with you of how we've helped other organizations and the variety of comm formats there are. Be it guides, be it infographics, video graphics, if you want something more lively, live action videos. I've done recordings with CEOs, and we've done recordings where we talk with people when we sit and we talk about the survey results of what's coming up, banners, getting the right image around the survey itself, all staff presentations, really trying to think of as many possible solutions that will work for the mixture of people you have working in your organization. Now I'm going to move on to the main story and event of the session itself, where we're going to hear from Joe and Helen. And we work with both Joe and Helen at Medivet, fantastic people, fantastic team who really care about the work being done when it comes to people. I remember first engaging with Joe, his excitement for the survey, talking about some strategic pillars and how it's going to align to that. Really thinking broadly, straight from the get-go, a good few months before the survey. How does this fit into who we are and where we want to go? And asking the exact right questions. So with all that in mind, and with Joe and Helen here with us today, I'm going to hand over to Joe and Helen to talk about their story. And I'm sure we've got some questions coming your way afterwards. But over to yourselves to steal the show. Joe, feel free. I was going to say take control, but you're already there. Fantastic. So go for it.
Thank you so much, Costa. Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Costa, for having us and letting us share our story of our approach to engagement here at Medivet. I guess what I wanted to do firstly, before we kind of get into the detail, is just talk a little bit around who Medivet is and what we do. You might be familiar with Medivet. Maybe you're already a client of Medivet, which is great. But I just wanted to tell you a little bit around kind of the structure of who we are and actually what our what our people demographic looks like. So we are a leading veterinary care provider, and we look after lots and lots of pets across the UK, Germany, and Spain. You can see there, we started about 32 years ago. We've got over 400 veterinary practices and 27 state-of-the-art 24-hour centres as well. 350 of our clinics are based in the UK. So looking at the list of people and where they're joining from today, I'm pretty sure there's one local to most of you that are on this call. But the whole reason we exist as a business is to help pets and owners live their best lives together. So whilst you might think of us as an animal-based business, we are actually a people business. It's the people in our clinics that are delivering the exceptional care. It's the clients that are bringing their pets in to come and see us. So the experience that people have working here is really important to us. And through that community of veterinary teams that we have, we're able to provide kind of exceptional care 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So there's a huge responsibility for all of the teams at Medivet in terms of what they're delivering on a day-to-day basis. And we look after pets from kind of routine treatment, so parasite control, vaccinations, etc., all the way through to kind of advanced surgeries and diagnostics. And no matter kind of where you are as a client and whether you've just got your new puppy or whether you've got a senior pet, we are here to kind of support you as a pet owner. And the things we really pride ourselves on, I guess first and foremost, and hopefully not a surprise, is kind of clinical excellence. So making sure that we're doing the right thing for pets and clients. But because we are kind of a group or a community of clinics across the UK and beyond, we're able to offer breadth of care, and through our network of clinics and hospitals, we're able to kind of lean on that expertise. So we're able to create quite a nice community feel within the organisation. And when a pet comes into us, they don't just benefit from that individual clinic, but they benefit from the collective expertise across the network. So thinking about our people and thinking about our colleagues, we have around 3,500 colleagues at Medivet, and they are primarily based in our clinics. So across those 350 clinics, we have our colleagues, and we have a mix of clinicians, so kind of vets and nurses. We have support staff who support our vets and nurses within those clinics. We then have our field-based teams. So these might be regional directors or kind of divisional supports that sit out in the field. And then we have a support office. So that is our kind of Watford-based support office where you would expect to see kind of people, finance, IT, etc. But as you can imagine, big blend of different types of work going on, big blend of people working in within the organisation, and over 1,500 of those colleagues are our vets and nurses, those clinicians that are based in our clinic. I think a really interesting fact about our demographic is that we have 86% of our colleagues identify as female. So that will ultimately shape, things like our policies, our benefits. We want to make sure that those things are reflective of the colleagues that we have in terms of their wants and needs, and something that, it's something that is reflective in kind of the engagement survey results, etc., in terms of what's important to people. So that's a little bit around who Medivet is and kind of what our business looks like and who our people are. So just moving on to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit around the engagement and kind of the survey that we built together. Like Costa mentioned, we kind of engaged in terms of building the survey and getting the ball rolling quite a few months before we initiated and launched it. Before we launched the survey, the most recent survey, we did a lot of research in looking at what was important to our people already and what did we know about our people already. So we looked at things like our previous engagement surveys that we had done, other data points like leaver data, industry data, focus groups, etc. And we took the themes of what was already important to people and categorized and crafted the questions to link to those key elements of the colleague experience, which are unique to us and our people that work here. I would say it's really important to do that research before you design the survey and design the questions. A survey shouldn't be built by a few people in a room who think it's the right question to ask. Actually taking the time up front to find out what matters to your people and then specifically ask them about it will not only increase the completion rate, but it will also influence the results you get, and you can do something really tangible and impactful with them. I just want to talk through some of the things that you see on the slide, just to kind of illustrate what that looks and feels like from an engagement survey perspective. So the first one is around kind of helping you to do what you do best. We want to enable all of our clinic teams to be able to provide that exceptional care. So this bucket of content looked at leadership questions, tools and resources to be able to really focus on delivering that exceptional care. We've then got given opportunities to develop and progress. So development is hugely important in the veterinary industry. Clinicians have a regulatory requirement to do a certain amount of continued professional development on an annual basis, but it's also a huge reason why people join the industry, why they're in the industry, and there's always this opportunity to learn. So it wouldn't be right for us to not ask questions in that survey around opportunities to develop and progress. Well-being, we'll talk a little bit more about later, but it's a huge topic in the industry. There are many pressures that are experienced by veterinary staff, so we really wanted to call that out as its own kind of set of questions within the survey itself. And then connected to our community, we have the benefit of being part of this, large organization with loads of great talented people within it. So making our colleagues feel like they are part of something bigger, even when they are in their kind of single clinic. We want to help them feel closer connected to the field teams, the support centre, and the clinics that sit around them. And then finally, appreciated for your contribution. So from a simple thank you to something that's really formal, veterinary is a vocation. People come into it because they care so deeply about the animals that they look after. So how can we appreciate the people and the effort that goes into delivering that care on a day-to-day basis? So all of those kind of, I guess, pillars built up the questions that we then asked in the survey, and then they will all influence the results of the colleague engagement questions. So if we can get those things right for our people, we believe that we can influence colleague engagement in a positive way, and continue to work on that as we progress through. So I
Joe,
guess
a very quick question. Sorry,
yes,
Joe.
go for it.
I mean, that's thoughtful process. Fantastic. Did you ever go back to the people at Medivet, or not everyone necessarily, but some people, just to let them know how much time went into getting that aspect right? Because clearly you're thinking about what's right for our people and our organization.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because this kind of launched at the same time as a lot of other, I guess, colleague engagement initiatives. So it was under a really nice banner of what we call Getting It Right for You, which Helen will talk through potentially a little bit later.
Excellent.
But it's all about, even the survey itself, if we can improve the experience of completing the survey, it's again a sign that we are improving that kind of colleague experience, even to the point where when we're asking for feedback. So we sent the survey to a number of colleagues before it went live to get feedback on it and make sure that we weren't missing anything. So those colleagues that have completed it before and completed it now will hopefully sense and feel that difference of the questions being asked. Cool. So Helen, I'll hand over to you if that's okay. And move the slide on.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. And afternoon, everyone. And like Joe, super pleased to be joining everyone on the call today. So I guess very much following on from what Costas was talking about from the outset, I just wanted to share a couple of insights in terms of what we did differently, particularly this year, in terms of how we engaged and communicated with our audience. And Costas, what you said really resonated with me, because I think I've been in the business 3.5 years now, and I think historically we'd fallen definitely into that trap of suddenly going, it's our annual engagement survey time, so we need to get organised and we need to get an email out, and then we'll send a couple of chasers just to remind people to do it. And we definitely weren't investing enough upfront time and thinking in terms of how do we make sure that it lands really well and engages the audience, and ultimately, like you said, encourages participation. So we definitely did more of that thinking this time round. And I guess my insights, none of them are rocket science. A lot of them were very simple, but I think they paid big dividends. So just to talk through the kind of 3 key things that I think were particular sort of call out. So as an organisation, we're definitely investing more time in our tone of voice. So again, when I joined the business, it was a tone of voice that was very directive, in lots of ways demonstrated a lack of trust in colleagues doing the right thing. And we've changed a lot of that over the last 3 years. And we intentionally did the same in terms of our engagement survey. So trying to make sure that it was much more human, it was much more personable, and it was much more relatable. So, historically, we'd always said, it's time for our annual engagement survey. And it very much came from an organisation point of view, as opposed to this year, we were very intentional about calling or having the strapline of "Your Voice Matters," and linking it very much to what Joe alluded to a moment ago in terms of all of the work that we were doing around the colleague experience. And I think just really small things like that in terms of language have made a difference in terms of the engagement in the survey. The second thing was about imagery. Again, we had a lot of legacy imagery, lots of out-of-date imagery, and not just for the purposes of the survey, but we've created a lot of new imagery for a whole host of the work that we're doing in Medivet, including our communication campaigns. And these are all colleagues that are part of our business today, and therefore just naturally engages people more in the campaign that you're running. And for the first time, and this was a bit of an interesting one for us, we attached the incentive of, for every person that participates, Medivet would donate £5 to Vetlife. And I think it's always a tricky one, attaching incentives, and happy to sort of come back to that at the end, Costas, in terms of questions around it. But we were very intentional in creating an incentive that really aligned with the needs and values of our colleagues. And Vetlife is a really well-known organisation in the vet sector, used by a significant number of the population. And we wanted to make the link between participation and being able to contribute to the sector on a broader level. And that was very much the driver behind Vetlife, which Joe will come on to talk about in terms of what did that translate to in terms of the tangible action that we've been able to drive forward as a consequence of the survey. So those were just sort of 3 simple things that we did from a communication perspective that definitely made a difference. And then on the next slide, I just wanted to sort of touch a bit more on how we communicate at Medivet, because I guess for context, and Joe alluded to this in his section, Medivet is a really challenging business when it comes to communication and engagement. And I've learned a huge amount in the time that I've been here in terms of how to communicate when you're working with a workforce where, in our case, over 90% of that workforce are based in our clinics, spread out, like Joe said, right across the United Kingdom. Clinics, as you can imagine, are very busy, dynamic environments, and our colleagues have very intermittent or minimal access to PCs, mobile phones, etc., during their workday. So in terms of digital communication, you've got to really think about how and when you can land a lot of that, because it would be hugely easy to fall into the trap of thinking we've communicated it because we've done it all digitally, but that doesn't necessarily land with the audience that we have here at Medivet. So we're on a journey. We're not there yet by any means, but we are definitely using a multi-channel approach for communication here at Medivet, and we definitely did that as part of this survey to try and make sure that we reached as many people as possible at the right time and in the right way. So some of the things that you can see here on the screen, again, just to share a couple of sort of tangible examples, was a lot of imagery again and personalised gifts on multiple platforms. So we're making big steps forward, having just recently launched in the last 18 months to 2 years our new Medivet Connect intranet site, which is becoming more and more of the go-to place for colleagues to access information that they need on a day-to-day basis. So our colleague survey, and you can see an example of a GIF that we had, was literally front and centre of the homepage throughout the entirety of the campaign, and post the campaign as well. And then we also have a practice management system that all of our clinics use, and we have splash screens when the colleagues are logged in the clinic. And again, we use that as a platform to generate engagement in the survey. Knowing that we needed multi-channel, we produced a lot of very visual, engaging physical materials like posters that we sent out into the clinics, because a lot of the clinic teams look on their notice board in the sort of colleague restrooms, etc., for important information. So we had visual displays, and then we're very dependent in this business on cascade happening through the line. So we invested a lot of time in making sure that we had regular updates in our weekly in-person and virtual huddles, that we got momentum behind leadership meetings, having a regular drumbeat each week, each month, in terms of reminders about the campaign and the survey. And then we have a weekly newsletter that goes out. So again, we had a regular drumbeat through the weekly email, which is probably, of all of our digital communications, is the most well read by our clinic teams, because it contains a variety of operational important information, and they know that every Wednesday that goes out into the organisation and is their go-to place to make sure they've got all of the latest information that they need, and therefore was a really good format for us to continue to use as part of the communication campaign.
I love, Helen, how you were all comfortable to still use physical material. Sometimes there's this view that everything has to be digital and online, but realistically, sometimes digital just doesn't work for some people. So you have to go old school, if we can call it that, and think of the classic printing something, making it as visible as possible if someone walks in, if they get into the factory or hospital or clinic and so on. So I'm a big believer of, not throwing things out too soon, and thinking of exactly what you did, which is, who's our audience, who are our people, what's the best format for them? Forget what's easier for us, or forget what we're more comfortable with, what works for them.
Yeah. Great, back to you, Joe.
I'm on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Joe.
Always one. So I guess next, talking about kind of the regular updates that happened around the data. So the engagement survey itself, we opened for 3 weeks, which, when I've been in other organizations, is quite a long time. And when we have done it previously here at Medivet, it is actually longer. Usually, historically, we had done it for 2 weeks. But where Helen had said, obviously, our clinics are very busy. We've got people who are working on shifts at certain times of the year that are busier than others. We decided to open the survey for 3 weeks, which was really good, because we saw a steady kind of completion throughout those 3 weeks, and then inevitably a little bit of a spike towards the end once people know that the survey is closing. But what we were able to do is create a regular drumbeat of kind of completion rates, and we did that by geographical location and by function as well. So what you see on the slide is kind of the breakdown of the completion rates by the end of week 1, and you can see there that we've got our divisions, which were our kind of geographical locations that include all of our clinics. And then you can see we've also got our support centre, so our kind of main office centre completion rate as well. And what this was really great for was creating a nice moment in what we have a weekly huddle. So on a Tuesday, we have a weekly huddle that all of support centre and all of kind of the field team leaders are invited to attend. Business updates, sharing positive things that have happened. We do something called the Medivet rounds, which is talking about a specific case that's been really interesting that week. But we were able to create a bit of a moment of, and here is the completion rate for the engagement survey. And inevitably that creates a little bit of healthy competition between the different geographical areas. And so we started to see, particularly in the field teams, kind of a nice drumbeat of competition. Have I hit 50%? Have I hit 60% completion? And because you incentivize it with the donation to Vetlife, the competition wasn't just about completing the survey, but it was also about raising, money for the charity partner. So there was kind of two different lenses to that, which was really good. And then we also shared individually with managers on the individual clinic completion rates, which we had not done previously. And so we sent out kind of packs to our regional directors who look after clusters of clinics in geographical locations. They received kind of completion rates for each of their clinics. So when they were out doing their face-to-face meetings, they're out in clinic 3 days a week, they were able to kind of go in and say, so hi everyone, we're at 60% completion. It'd be really great if we could get up to 70%. Is there anything that's blocking it? Anything that's stopping the completion? As a reminder, there's a £5 incentive for every completion. So again, Helen said we rely heavily on Cascade. So relying on those field-based teams and line managers within the clinics to be able to cascade that information was really important. So we have a real responsibility at a central level to make sure we're giving line managers the data to be able to push and ensure that people are aware what their completion rate is and to encourage more completions as you move on.
Joe, how many emails did you send out?
My gosh, I think I was doing, so there's 27 regional directors and they each got kind of a pack sent on a weekly basis. So yeah, it was with support center probably over 100 emails I sent over
I'm only asking
because
our platform does a lot of work around emailing when the survey closes and then results to managers and a lot of manager support. But it's just sparked an idea, and I'll speak to my tech team. But I wonder if there can be an automated email out to a manager or someone about the response rates on a weekly basis.
That would be awesome.
Automatically. So I'm not sure if we've got a tech person on call here, but I'll speak to someone. I think it's a great idea, and as you all know, we do work with our clients to hear what could work going forward in terms of future developments. But it's a great sparking of idea there, Joe, and I'm gonna pick that one up.
I think what was really nice is that the People Insight platform kind of took care of the reminders and the 1 week to go and so we could complement some of the individual stuff that was going out. So if I was a colleague and I hadn't completed it yet and I missed the centrally led comms, the People Insight platform would send me a reminder that I hadn't done it yet and I only had a week left. So that was really good. But I think based on your organization and if you've got people who are like based at a laptop or not, you can just complement what the system provides you with some additional stuff. So moving on to the next slide. So the results. So we did 2 surveys this time. For the first time, we did an all-colleague survey and a branch partner survey for our branch partner community. And the completion rates were 62 and 68. And you might be looking at those going, well, you would maybe expect something higher. But with the majority of our business not being desk-based, because they are supporting pets and owners, we are really happy with this completion rate. And yes, we absolutely want to increase it. But we know that if we hadn't have incentivized it and made this really impactful with Vetlife and making sure that we were influencing and impacting the industry through doing it, we wouldn't have seen that completion rate be where it is. So we've got some work to do as to find out what maybe the blockers were for those who haven't completed it. But we were satisfied with the completion rate because it gave us a really big chunk of data to be able to do something really meaningful with. And all of those completions resulted in over £11,000 being able to be donated to Vetlife. And I just want to talk a little bit about Vetlife. I know Helen alluded to it earlier, and kind of why we chose it and why Vetlife was the charity that we chose to donate to. So we already have an internal charity partner, so kind of an official charity partner, if you will, which is very much animal and conservation focused. So obviously massive part of what we do. And it would have been really easy to kind of go straight to that one as the charity of choice for the survey. But engagement is all about people. And I said at the start, we are a people business as much as we're an animal business. And so we needed to pick a charity that had a real impact on those working in the veterinary industry. So Vetlife is kind of the main charity in the industry, and they are a charity whose mission is to provide support to members of the UK veterinary community, but also their families. So it is broader than just the veterinary community itself. And it gives support on emotional, financial, and health concerns, and proactively seeks ways to prevent those concerns happening in the future. And I guess bringing it to life a little bit more, there are significant challenges in the veterinary sector, and you may be aware of them, you may not be. But if you go to Vetlife's website, and kind of this is, on a number of different kind of research papers, etc., but it says, in the veterinary community, they continue to experience significantly higher levels of depression and suicide than the general population. So Vetlife does a huge amount of important work in trying to prevent that. And the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, commonly referred to as RCVS, they did a survey recently that surveyed people within the industry, and nearly 3/4, so 70% of respondents said that they had personally experienced a mental health concern, but only half of those had received any sort of professional support for that concern. And then over 8 in 10, so 82%, said that they thought veterinary nursing was a stressful career. And whilst mental health is only one element of the support that Vetlife offer, it was really clear to us that it was a powerful and it was a really impactful charity to support in connection to our engagement survey. And especially as, and if you remember from the slide earlier, our own community had told us how important well-being was to them. So it was kind of a no-brainer really, in terms of we absolutely wanted Vetlife to be the charity of choice, because we wanted to have that wider impact on kind of the veterinary community and the people in the business that had used it themselves. So just moving on to the next slide, we, through the completion of the survey, obviously it's great that we got to raise that money for Vetlife and able to fund the ongoing support that they provide on a daily basis. But you can kind of think of the positive knock-on effect that these donations have. So yes, it absolutely supports the veterinary industry, and it supports the families of those people. But if we support our people, so if we support the colleagues at Medivet, if we support those in the veterinary industry, they're able to continue to deliver that exceptional care to my pet, to your pet, to all of those pets that they look after. And so that impact has a positive impact on the communities that they serve. And often a veterinary clinic is at the center and heart of that community. And so it's almost important for the health of the community to make sure that the staff within that clinic are supported and get what they need. So it's been a really nice experience to be able to link the engagement survey to something that can have such a positive impact on the industry and beyond. And so looking forward to the next survey and then how we incorporate it again, hopefully. But the kind of response from the business and from colleagues within our clinics was a really positive one, because it felt like something different to what we had done previously. So Helen, I'll hand back over to you just to talk about, so what do we do with it next?
Thanks, Joe. And yeah, this is the last slide, and I guess just wanted to share a couple of kind of reflections and insights based on the work that we did, but also give you a sense of kind of where we're going next with it. And the first one is a really interesting one, because talking very candidly, the timing of our survey ended up moving. So we were originally scheduled to launch the engagement survey at the end of last year. We've had a number of leadership changes at Medivet, which resulted in the survey being delayed. And actually the timing has been really interesting in that we launched the survey in March, correct, Joe? Just remind me. So we launched the survey in March, and therefore got the outputs as the business was just starting to really move forward into our new financial year planning. So we run on an April to April financial year, and therefore it really coincided with us doing a whole load of strategic planning in terms of where our focus would be for this coming year ahead. And therefore, the timing, and I personally think we should be sticking to this timing for future engagement, annual engagement surveys, really enabled us to directly correlate the themes coming out of the survey and build them directly into all of the work that we were doing around our business planning and all of our budget and forecasting for the year ahead, as opposed to it sort of falling slightly in the middle of our financial year. And that has been a real bonus that we need to take forward. Might sound like an obvious thing that we should have been planning for, but definitely something we want to take forward as a learning from this survey. As Joe talked about, all of the top level results, the key themes and the key outcomes have been communicated both business wide. So we were very intentional about making sure there wasn't a big gap between people completing the survey, us correlating, compiling all of the outputs and the themes and making sure that we had communicated that back out to the business. And there has been a lot of work done at a functional level. So, for example, in the people function, we've taken all of the people team results, cascaded that down into our broader community of people team colleagues, and identified our action plan and are now putting that in place, and the other functions are following suit as well. But we've now, the bit that, again, talking very openly about that we're, I guess, slightly behind on, and I keep pushing because we need to speed it up, is that because we've had a new leadership change and therefore we've had a broader strategic change in how the business is going to move forward, we're in the process of doing all of the work around how we're going to engage the Medivet organisation in that new business strategy. And I'm really keen that we line up the engagement on the broader business strategy with really talking about our commitments at a colleague engagement level at the same time, because I think the two things need to go hand in hand. And if we're going to be bringing together all of our colleagues in different forums, whether it be town halls or through some of the digital campaigns that we're planning, etc., if we're going out large and loud into the organisation, there isn't a better opportunity to be talking to colleagues about how we want to continue to improve their experience of working at Medivet based on the feedback that they shared with us as part of the survey. And then I think the last thing, which again is part of the journey that Medivet is on. So I talked at the beginning about how historically we've just been in that very sort of traditional cadence of a one-time annual survey. I think as part of all of the work that we're doing around improving the colleague experience at Medivet, we need to start to move to a much more regular rhythm and cadence of feedback and listening, and what are we doing with it and where are we going next with the colleague experience, as opposed to you told us this, we're now going to do this, and then we go back a year later and start the process again. I think we've got to get into a much more regular cadence. We've got that planned. And this isn't a plug for People Insights, but we've worked with them brilliantly over the last sort of 3 years that I've been here, and are now starting to look at the capability of the People Insights platform to enable us to run those much more regular pulse surveys as part of an integration into Workday that we launched last year, plus some other sort of broader listening, in-person listening forums, etc., so that we can make sure that there's a constant feedback loop happening. And alongside that, we can keep a really regular drumbeat of storytelling in terms of outcomes and impact that are happening in the business around the colleague experience. So I think that's it, Costas, from us.
Thank you, Helen. And Joe, delighted to hear, of course, the story you shared. And Helen, I think you've got a team with you to make the approach you want to take going forward happen. And of course, we are here to support you going forward. There were some questions that came, I think I need to grab the take control, that came across. We've got a few minutes left, so let's see if we can get through some of them. Joe, Helen, I might throw some your way. So here are some of the questions that we had. So is there, Helen and Joe, do you want to have a pick? Is there any you want to go for straight away, and I'll chip in as well? Helen, I think there was one around the incentives you were going to ask, or there was a question that came through. Let's see if it is here.
Yeah, so I think I've talked to some of this already. I guess my only sort of additional reflections on this one is, I think transparency is super important in terms of communicating why you're offering incentives, and being really focused that the goal is, to ultimately encourage participation and drive positive change, whilst, in our case, wanting to have a broader impact that was aligned to the needs and values of our colleagues. I've not had experience of attaching sort of monetary rewards, and I personally wouldn't recommend it, because I think the minute you start attaching monetary awards or individual rewards, I think you're in the danger zone of people going, it's a fire response as opposed to encouraging genuine engagement.
And there was something collective about what you did, which was aligned to your values. And I think also with the incentives, if done rightly, it does demonstrate that the organization and leaders, they care about participation. So aligning it to an incentive that works is, well, we're not just offering this for the sake of it. It's because we want more people to respond so we can do something with that data. Yeah.
So I think it's, for me, it's just about how can you create those meaningful incentives. So, outside of what we did with our, a charity partner, I think something like creating a sort of group incentive. So the first function or the first division, or the first clinic that gets 100% participation gets, a meal out or some sort of reward for the clinic. I think when you can connect it to a broader colleague engagement activity or, positive angle, then so much the better. I think it's just about being really transparent about why you're incentivizing and communicating that well, and making sure that whatever that incentive is, it's really meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. John, I'm going to throw a question your way with when you spoke about communication and you're talking to people. Talk to us a tiny bit, and our time's running out, but how did you communicate survey anonymity in a way that build trust? I know you touched on that. You touched on that word trust as well earlier.
Yeah, and it's so important, particularly in a kind of a healthcare organization. It's all based on trust and relationships. So there's going to be a small element of suspicion when it comes to giving feedback, and I think that's unavoidable. So you kind of need to firstly just accept that there will always be a little bit of it. But there is a real difference between anonymity and confidentiality. So we were really explicit with that in some of the communications that would go out. So yes, the survey is anonymous, so people Insight are collecting that feedback on our behalf through the survey, and we have anonymity thresholds in place. So teams with less than 5 won't get specific scores or results; they'll be fed up into broader results. But explicitly saying that the comments and the results will be shared with the relevant people who can make tangible differences. So it might be that the people team see certain elements of it, comms team, IT, down to line managers. And so, people giving that feedback need to know how that information will be used. And then also saying that, all the verbatim comments will be reviewed. So if you choose to put any identifiable information in there, and some people do, some people put their name in it, and some people put their, clinic name in it. That is a completely personal choice, but it's up to the colleague whether they choose to do that. So like Helen said, transparency is everything. So giving that information up front is really key. And then I think the second element is making sure that your line managers really understand that. So do they understand how the data is used? Do they understand the anonymity? Because ultimately they're going to be the person that their team member goes to go, how is this information being used? So making sure that everyone's crystal clear on anonymity, confidentiality, and how the data will be used to support them.
I love how you brought it back to the why. Why is this the minimum threshold? What are we going to do with the data? So you're not just announcing what that number is. There's a reason, and here's the purpose. It's what we plan to do with it. And that's back to the point around meaningful comms, making it land well. You're building awareness and also explaining, and back to that point around earning trust. And that's what gains participation. We are going to close very shortly, but just one question here around time frame for sharing survey results. As soon as possible is my view. Get it out to your leaders, make them aware, and then it's very powerful. And there have been instances where we have delivered to an exec team and the very next day have done an all-staff presentation, and it's very powerful if you can say, hey, I was in front of your leaders yesterday delivering the same results, talk about transparency and openness. Here we are doing the same thing to you a day after. So with the other questions we haven't got to, I will speak to my colleague Ryan, who'll be sharing the webinar recorded, and hopefully we'll add some responses to these questions. Just to finish up and to say thank you to everyone who joined the session. For every attendee in today's webinar, we will plant a mangrove tree through our partnership with Eden People on Planet, and that is down to you. So another contribution there because of participation. And finally, how we can help you. So if you want more impact from your surveys, please scan here or get in touch with us. We'll be delighted to just have a conversation with you, learn what you're doing, learn from us and how you can improve the program and get the most from your survey, learning from the people we already work with, like Medivet over here. And we'll soon have another Learn and Share webinar, and we hope to see you again then. So thank you once again and have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.